Okay, Randy, we're back again. Another podcast, another recording. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing excellent. I don't think I'm doing as good as you. This is your special day, but I'm doing all right.
My special day. Is that
It's your
is that
special day. It's your
that what
special
we're
day.
going with today? My special day?
It is your special
There's
day.
so many ways to go with that term. Like it's just this is your special day, honey.
Yeah,
I don't know what to make of that. But yes, it is my 50th birthday today. As you can see, it's backwards on the screen behind me. Warning, it's my 50th birthday.
I did see that. I did see that.
Yeah, so when I got back from my run this morning, sprinkled around the house and outside were all kinds of "It's your 50th birthday" signs.
In case you forget.
Either in case I forgot, because trust me, after running this morning, I was definitely feeling my age. But to share with you, and here it goes, my good of the week. I'll share the screen with you. Um, this is how it started. I started it, I have to be honest. But like, okay, so I started with this.
Fantastic. That's
This
just
is Everett. If you're not watching, you're just listening. It's the Molly Shannon character from Saturday Night Live, who turns 50 and does all kinds of things when she turns 50. I think when this happened, I think people didn't think 50-year-olds would do. If they're like as weird as that character was and uncomfortable as she made other people feel, like that is not the 50 I want to be. But I shared that, and then I got a couple back in response from other people in the extended family. Um, I got one of
there you
these.
go. That's a
Okay, that
great
was
one.
good.
Classic
Yeah,
Seinfeld. Love
classic.
it.
This is one of the signs that was on the door. Let's see if it comes up on the screen here. Don't know if it's working properly. No, that was me after I ran. 50 and tired. There we go. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. This is on the door. 50. The 40 zone ends. And then there are many of those like sprinkled around the house. The last one was simply that just said for my son was like, "Happy birthday, you're old." So, so I've been thinking a lot about it. I thought that I would have more, genius to things to say about it. I don't, but it is a nice thing to reach. It's a nice milestone to reach, and feels kind of good. So, you know,
I know your feelings about big birthdays, big celebrations, and parties and whatnot. So, are you doing anything to celebrate, or have
yeah,
we?
no,
Did you just describe the extent of it? Some confetti around the house, and that's it.
no. So definitely I'll definitely celebrate it. Go out to dinner tonight for sure. And we are going somewhere new, somewhere actually near you. I imagine over the next couple of weeks, I'll do different things to celebrate. Not everyone's around all the time, so it's hard to celebrate with everybody in the family at one time. And it's a holiday in the rest of the world. So luckily, no one else can actually reach out to me. So the family members, so they all tried to hit it up on Sunday beforehand. Um, but yeah, no, I have a couple of things like I don't know, I didn't get to in terms of getting them prepared for today, in terms of things I wanted to do. I have a couple of midlife crisis kinds of things that I want to do. Uh, you know, but I didn't want to over philosophize about it because I think that would just sort of bring me down. Uh, and and part of me, knowing me long enough, as well as you do, spending a lot of time by myself on my birthday is actually like a real plus in my case. So a lot of alone time, which is good. So yeah, it is what it is.
Amazing, amazing. I mean, it's funny. I was working through that in my head as you said you went for a run this morning. I'm like, I don't know if I like that might be a day I give myself off. But then I was thinking for you, like that's just you might have gone for an additionally long run today just to get that solitude and quiet.
Yeah, I got at least an hour plus of solitude this morning out on the trail, beating myself up. Uh, it was hard. It was long. And that was good. Um, but coming back to see the signs on the door was actually pretty funny. If I wasn't tired enough or felt my age enough, the signs really put it to me. Yeah. So one of them is like about like memory loss. One of them is like about like I don't know, dropping things or falling down. All that stuff. But I don't know. I'd like to think that, as I said, 50 is the new 30.
Yeah.
And life begins at 50. I think that's the way I want to look at this is life begins at 50. There's a lot still yet to do. Even though I jokingly call it the third quarter, I feel like I just started the third quarter. It's easy when you're born in like 1975, so 25 years is easy. 2020,
That's
like
right.
so 100 is 50 years away. 2075, like I can't imagine what 2075 is going to look like. I certainly didn't know what 2025 was going to look like. Yeah. Anyway, it's a very
Amazing.
long-winded go to the week.
Well,
I'm
happy
appreciative.
birthday.
I'm
You
thankful.
deserve it.
Thank you very much.
I mean, you're
Moving on.
even doing this podcast. You could have canceled. We could kick this till tomorrow, but you're awesome.
No,
You're on
I
the
mean,
ball.
it's true. Could have canceled, but I felt like it actually works because of the topic of today is actually right on schedule with this,
Sure,
so it's really
that's true.
fine. And it's something that I've thought about. We've talked a little bit about in the past. We'll get to it in just a couple of moments, but that's my good of the week is the 50th birthday. I'm happy about it, celebrating it in the way that I like to celebrate it. If you're all out there and you like to celebrate differently, don't be a hater. So everyone celebrates differently, and move on. That's all.
Well, here's my blessing to you and to me and to us is that I'm what am I 41? I'm 41. So I hope that on my 50th birthday we're still rocking this podcast and you get to send it back my way in 8.5 years from now that we're still kicking, we're still
So the
doing this.
first thought that entered my mind when you said that was, "Oh my God, I'm going to be funny when we talk about that,"
Think of how much wisdom you're going to have to give me
which
at that
is
point.
crazy bananas to think at 59, like where that's going to be and what that's going to look like. But because like I have older brothers, so my older brothers are 3 and 6 years older than me. So one brother is going to be 56, the other one's going to be 53. 56 to me is like that's a heavy number. My mother commented on Friday or Sunday, whenever it was, that she has 3 children over the age of 50, which is really crazy
Yeah. Yeah.
to contemplate. So that's a good blessing to put out there. That will have been a lot of topics and a lot of podcasts and a lot of editing on Riverside. Goodness gracious, God! How many YouTube shorts can you put up in 9 years, or whatever that's going to look like in 9 years from now?
Right.
But maybe they'll have like the microphones embedded like right into my head, and then we just talk while we're walking around. Yeah. Okay. That's my long-winded good of the week. I don't know if you have anything
All right.
left. If you don't, great. If you do, great.
I do. I do have a good of the week. It's I've been it's been what 4 or 5 days since we interviewed Bob Nelkin.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking a lot about that interview. Bob Nelkin is my good of the week. It was an awesome experience to talk to him. He also was just like a little bit behind the curtain here. I think of all of our guests so far, we collectively have knew him the least, right?
Right.
So like there was just he was a blank sheet of paper, I think, to both of us, and we didn't know really what to expect. And both to hear his stories, and he's retired and has put in a very long career and just had a lot to reflect on. And speaking of age and getting up there, like I thought he was really articulate about some of the experiences that he's had. I thought he was really, in retrospect, I didn't realize this at the time, like so humble, considering some of the accomplishments that he was talking about and the changes that he made and was able to, the impact that he was able to enable. It's just like, if I'm ever one day blessed to be able to have that sort of impact, I'm going to be screaming it from the mountaintops. Like that was just awesome. And the last thing that I've been thinking about is just I knew him professionally only in the very last part of his career when he was the CEO of the United Way back in Pittsburgh, where I'm from. And so in my head, like that's who he was. He's the CEO of the United Way.
Yeah.
And reflecting back on that interview, how little of that interview was about that last position, and just like he just had a long, awesome career and did really amazing things, and it was cool to reflect on that experience. So that's my good of the week is Bob Nelkin, our previous
Yeah.
guest.
No. Good. Good of the week. I actually, in reviewing the transcript to prepare that episode for posting, I pulled out like 10 gems, quotes from him that were like the 10 commandments of Bob almost. Like it was just certain things that he said, the way he said them. Look, he's been at this a long time, so maybe some of them are practiced, whatever they are, and they're lines that he has that he's used. But still, they just like you pulled them out, and I was like, there was just so many quotable quotes from that conversation. And you're right, much of it focused on the early part of his career, some of the early things that sort of prompted the entirety of the career. And you're right, we certainly didn't know him going in, but we certainly got a lot out of it coming out. I imagine as it was going on, I was thinking there must be so many people like him who are, long time community servants in that way who have so much wisdom that doesn't get shared because they retired or whatever it is, and they're not resources, unfortunately, for a lot of in the mentor space. Let's say that could really add a lot of wisdom, because you could sit with guys like him for hours and hours, pouring stories out, wins, fails, lessons, like strategies, structures, theories, all kinds of genius around it, and not even get like even halfway through it. But there must be other people like him. And that itself just was like a window into that whole thing, which was really great.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. That takes us to the topic of the week. The topic of the week is not the birthday, but I will say that the birthday is, in some level, the impetus for today's conversation, which is basically the idea of how do organizations and how can organizations better leverage special occasions as they relate to their audiences, their communities of support, their mission, whatever that is. So there's just a lot of them. And as I was thinking about birthdays specifically as an example, I remembered, and I'll start with this as an example. One of the organizations I worked at, I implemented a birthday strategy. And the idea was that we had a lot, because it was school related as an organization. So we had a lot of information about students and wanted like touch points, just the way to do something. And so we set up with a software that on birthdays, people would get an email and they'd get like a coupon, which I thought would just be nice, a nice thing to do. And so on the occasion of this day, on my birthday, so thinking about the different ways that organizations can successfully use special occasions as they come up. Start where you want to start, and we'll go from there.
So I think I've thought about this in a couple different ways. One is on the donor side, right?
Okay.
So you were just describing an example where the donor has a birthday and how can the organization celebrate that and do something just to celebrate that special day. And I think you gave a really good example. I think a lot of organizations don't set these types of systems up for two reasons. One is they're hard to set up, and that goes into really setting up a system that recognizes people's birthdays and sends something out, automates it as much as possible so that there's as little sort of manual effort involved. And that's a big investment. It's not always high on people's priorities list. But the other reason is it's in a little bit of a catch-22 is then I've talked to some people that don't want to put in the time to set it up because then it's automated and then that's so impersonal and the organization is just automatically sending out an email or a coupon for something and there's no personal relationship to it. And to that, I respond, there's always room for improvement. And if you can create some sort of like pie in the sky system where the CEO is able to handwrite a beautiful personalized card to every donor, obviously that is the best.
Yeah.
But just because you can't hit the ideal, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do anything at all, right? That doesn't mean that sending something that's automated and it doesn't have some advantage to building a deeper relationship with the donor. And so I hate when that stops organizations from setting it up in the first place, the fact that it's not perfect. So I love what you did at the school and just had some sort of token recognition that I see you as a donor. I know it's your birthday. I'm going to help you celebrate in this small way. Could we be doing it better? Of course, but this is going to have to do for now. And I think that goes a long way in deepening relationships between organizations and donors, between fundraisers, individual fundraisers,
Right.
and donors.
So take that step back for a second. Give it the wider lens, if you will, from the organizational standpoint of what the philosophy of, if you want to call it, or the strategy of special occasions can and should be. How should leaders be thinking about these things? Why should they be thinking about these things? What's the benefit for the org, let's say, on one level? And then, as you sort of pointed out a little bit, but maybe go a little bit deeper, what's the benefit for the donor in having this marked? And after that, we'll talk about what the different kinds of occasions are, because they're not the same. There's not one type that we're talking about here. There are different types, but overall, each one has a reason and a way to go about it.
I don't think it's super complicated. I think that the donor relationship to an organization should be as little transactional as possible. In other words, the more that you can create a relationship, the more that you can see a person, treat them as an individual, the better you're going to be. They're not just a checkbook. They're not just a piggy bank. They're not just giving you money, but they are someone who has a birthday. They're someone who has philanthropic passions. And
Yeah.
the more that you can uncover those, the more that you can relate to someone on the human level, the better off you're going to be. I don't think it's any different than, I'm trying to think, if you were networking with someone and looking for a job, if all you did was focus on the job, then there's something to that, and that's fine. But the more that you relate to someone as a person, the more that you got to know them, like that's when real networking happens, right? When it's just like, I like you as a person, so therefore I'm going to try and open doors for you. There's just that human element to it that I think gets lost often between organizations and donors.
Okay, if it's that obvious, let's say on some level, most organizations don't do it. Like my inbox was not flooded this morning with birthday messages, but one organization that I work with, I got the perfunctory email from HR wishing me a happy birthday, right? On the back end of that, the CEO of the organization texted me privately and also wished me a happy birthday. There's no way he knows that other than the fact that the system has it in and he gets a notification of some variety. Hey, it's so and so's birthday. And then he WhatsApps them or sends them a text message and lets them know. Because I've never told him that it's like, how would he know otherwise? So there's that, quick benefit of having the system set up. But if it's so obvious and natural, the majority of organizations don't do what we'll call, for lack of a better term, the celebratory occasions. That's that first category, let's say. In that outreach or that cultivation or that relationship or that transaction, they just don't do it.
Yeah, I think the psychology of why it works is simple. I don't think the implementation is simple. And I think for a lot of organizations that are understaffed and under resourced, to set up a system that you're collecting someone's birthday and that automatically gets inputted into a CRM, which automatically sends a email and a notification to the CEO and to the donor relationship manager. Like all of that stuff takes time and there's going to be bugs and it might not work the first time and you might make a mistake and your whole CRM might get a happy birthday message all on the same day because you didn't click the one really important box that you were supposed to click. And that's scary and a lot of investment and it's hard. And then once it's set up, it just runs and it's smooth. And the CEO that you talked about took that extra step and said, I know that our system sent Bini a form happy birthday email, but I'm going to take it one step further. I'm going to send him something more personal, a text message. He knows that's directly from me. Like that's obviously a best case scenario or a better case scenario.
It's good leadership, right? I mean, it's
Great
good
leadership.
It's good leadership, right? Yeah, kudos to him. Okay, so I get it. I get the underlying, and again, those for the most part, what we're talking about so far is the celebratory occasion. There are other kinds of occasions, which maybe it's important to mention what those are here, and then it'll come back for a minute to the philosophy or the strategy that is underlying it. One thing I'll say before I get into those specific categories and see if you can guess them, but is from my standpoint, and I've said this here before, and I say it to coaching clients and fundraising and leadership, that the calendar gives you opportunities during the course of a year to reach out to people for no reason whatsoever. We've talked about this. You and I have talked about this multiple times in other spaces, but also in this podcast, I think early on. And because the calendar does that, it's like just incumbent and quote unquote an easy opportunity for an organization to reach out to somebody to do what you said, which is just cultivate the relationship. So the way I always explained it is that from the Jewish calendar, there's like 8 weeks don't go by without some sort of a holiday or day that's on the calendar where you can reach out as an organization and send nothing more than the email that celebrates the day, memorializes the day, acknowledges the day. That has nothing to do with birthdays. It's just the calendar days, right? So that's, 6, 8 times a year where you have a natural reason to use an occasion that's coming up, holiday or something, to reach out to people. And you're just sort of jumping on top of that. You're sitting on top of that wave. You don't have to do anything more than just, oh, it's coming and just be prepared for it and get that message. Then when you don't, So like to me, as you said, it's very much about the relationship. And then related to that is that it's easy to do in a certain sense because, like, as opposed to what you said about the specific personal kinds of things, forget the personal for a second. the global and general things that go on around your audience. These are sort of inflection points in the calendar, which are easy to miss, easy to make, and then really beneficial to the fact that you hit that person 10 times during the year with nothing more than, hey, it's a holiday, happy holiday. Hey, it's Memorial Day, we're thinking about the soldiers or whatever it is, the veterans, and we want you to do that as well. So to me, that's just a like related to your initial point about cultivating relationships is the fact that it happens on some level organically, and it can, and we should take advantage of it.
Yeah, I'm of two minds a little bit on some of the things that you said, because let's take there's a holiday coming up. Let's say I don't know, Labor Day's coming up in a couple months at the end of the summer, right? July 4th. Thank you. I was blanking. Okay, so you have July 4th. You have U.S. Independence Day coming up, and you're going to get some companies, nonprofits, companies, whatever, that are going to send out an email to all of their clients, and let's say all of their US based clients. And it's going to say, from my family to yours, wishing you a happy 4th of July. And I'm of two minds of that, because on the one hand, you're top of mind when you send that out. Someone receives it and says, oh, this company sent out an email, like I check, like I now remember that they exist in the world, even though I'm not using their service at this exact moment. On the other hand, it's not so personal. There's nothing personal about it, I would say. And I don't really know what benefit it serves. Whereas a birthday message, even if it's also automated and the same amount of time went into crafting that birthday message with the initial setup as it did to write that happy 4th of July message, there's just something inherently more personal about the birthday message, that this is specifically to you. And so I don't love when companies or organizations in this case send out those happy 4th of July messages, if you're able to make them at all personal. And certainly if you're able to connect what's happening to your service, your product, your organization, if you're an organization that's celebrating,
For sure.
or that revolves around, freedom or independence or whatever, like, and it's not a stretch to tie that in. I think that that's a great way to do it. But I don't know. When I love the just general e-blast of happy holidays sort of thing.
I'm not saying you have to be generic about it, but my thought is that it's just we talk a lot about the fact that organizations too often just ask for money. They don't do correspondence and connection beyond just the ask and the thank, right? That's immediate. And so other things that just touch, that even if they're not as personal, the personal one is the high, let's say, of those, right? But the other ones, and I'm going to talk about those in just a second, what they are. I think there's something to that, is this not so much the personalization of it, is that it creates habituation to some degree around it, and it creates more connection points. Hey, that organization, they're on top of everything, let's say, is some way to think about it. And if it feels like forced because they're way too trying to connect it to their organizational mission, fine. I don't know that they have to do that, but let's give it an example. So here's the categories, and we'll go into it more further. In my book, there are what I would call 5 categories of special occasions. One is the celebratory, which we just talked about, which is birthdays, anniversaries, awards, promotions, stuff like that. So those are two-sided. There's individual birthdays and anniversaries, and then even organizational anniversaries. So it's our 10th anniversary as an organization, and we want to celebrate X, Y, or Z. Or the CEO joined our company 5 years ago today. Congratulations, Bob, on 5 years of being CEO. We just wanted to let you know about Bob's accomplishments. So one is celebratory. I think it's the most natural. It's the hardest to recoup if it's talking about the donor side of it. I'll give you an example of someone I know who did it really, really well, but in a minute. Number 2 is, I think, the opposite, is the tragic and the commemorative kind of a thing. So where you have losses and memorials and, pain. So 9/11 is one of those. October 7th for the Jewish community and people of Israel is certainly one of those. Everyone, I think, unfortunately has those things. You don't have to write anything about your organization. It's just simply just showing solidarity if you're connected to it in any way, or you connect to it in any way. And I think it shows that you're not, misaligned, you're out of touch with what's going on in the world. The third category is emergencies. So natural disasters, the sudden outbreak of war, pandemic, economic collapses, things like that. I think we've seen those things happen around organizations that we're connected to, let's say. The emergency one, it's an easy one, let's say, to sort of connect to, but that's a different category of special occasion. I got two more. Fourth one is holidays, which I mentioned, we talked a little bit about. You can connect those to your organization. I don't think you have to. And the fifth one is the personal milestones, um, which could be beyond just birthdays. It could be graduations. It could be, I don't know, bar and bat mitzvah kind of a thing. It could be something beyond that, um, whatever it is, depending on your organization. So if your organization is, Alcoholics Anonymous or something related like that, and you want to celebrate a person's 7 years of sobriety, right? So that's a great opportunity to celebrate somebody's sobriety on their personal milestone space outside of the celebration. So those are the five categories um, that I thought about in terms of how to think about special occasions. There are a lot of them, and you're right. Planning for all of them and prepping for all of them is not a full-time job, but it's a lot of time. Did I miss any? No.
No, you got my wheels turning though, because I'm thinking about these in a lot of different ways.
Yes.
I think I don't even know where to begin. Look, I think that let's start with this. You have you have milestones, not necessarily celebrations. You have milestones, whether positive or negative, that are individual versus collective. And it goes without saying that the individual ones are much harder to implement than the collective.
Yes.
In other words, if there's a holiday or the organization's anniversary, or on the flip side, if you're dealing with some sort of national tragedy, to get an e-blast out or to get some sort of communication out to that wide net and say, congratulations, or what a terrible loss, we're all in this together. On the scale, that's relatively easy to do. And even on the birthday side, we talked about automations, right? You can collect that information, it can go in the system, and once the system is set up, it automatically is going to send out birthday emails. If you're looking at individual losses, a death in the family, if you're looking at personal accomplishments, a graduation, a bar bat mitzvah, with some of the other examples you gave, those aren't generally automated, right? You can have a template for here's what we send to people when we learn that they're
Yes.
going, when their kid graduates high school or college, but your system isn't really going to know that. I mean, maybe if it's a school and you have some sort of, but like generally speaking, organizations don't know when their donors are celebrating a birth in the family, or a
Yeah.
graduation or anything like that.
Agreed.
So I think that there's the doing it, there's the knowing how you're going to get that information in the first place. There's the implementation of it. There's training your staff to pay attention for it. I mean, this is a sort of a gross example because the ulterior motive is so clear. Whereas in some of these other cases, it's to build a relationship. But I had one mentor when I worked early on at a local organization that all of its donors were very local. The mentor would comb through the local business times, just looking for people's promotions, just looking for at who changed jobs, who was just named a
Yeah.
partner at this firm or whatever. And he was good enough to not, turn that into an ask right away, but he would certainly use that as points to reach out, both with current donors and prospective donors, to say, hey, congratulations, I saw you just became general manager of this office or whatever it is, and opened the door that way. So, but he instituted the practice of combing through that business times with a highlighter every single day or every single week, however often it came out. Like that, talk about a habit, like he made a habit out of that. So if you're an organization, I think there's different ways to do this. Like I've seen people set up Google alerts for certain
Guilty.
keywords. There you go. So that every time, again, there's a bar mitzvah in your neighborhood or whatever it is, like that's going to jump up, and maybe 7 out of 10 times you're not going to know the people. They're not going to be donors or prospective donors, but 3 out of those 10 times they might be, and now you have a touch point. So like I think there's different ways to sort of build that in. I can keep going, but I feel like you're going to have what
No,
to respond to this
I
already.
agree. Like, there's definitely the practical side of this is complex. There's no question. You probably have to pick and choose where you're going to go for this kind of thing on the special occasion strategy. Let's call it that. So, and I said just now, guilty of Google alerts. The way I did it was I set up Google alerts for board members.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So the Google alert, was for the specific name of the person. And anytime anything, they came up anywhere on the web, right? I found out about it. So president of the board, chairman of the board, other members, VPs of the board, and it just became a natural touch point. Hey, just saw that article about you, saw that interview you just did. It's on YouTube, right? Great interview. Nothing else, nothing more. And that humanized the executive director in the eyes, as totally selfish in the eyes of that board member. But I would do it for beyond that also for donors. I would sometimes, this is how you do it, right? I would sign up for newsletters from synagogues, certain synagogues from certain communities, right, in advance of traveling to the community, knowing what had gone on for the last 4, 5, 6 weeks in the community, to be aware. But also, if something happened, someone was honored, someone had a birthday, someone had a celebration, whatever it is, I got it and I was on top of it. And that helped tremendously because they're sitting there thinking, how the heck did he know about that? Right. And not only did he know about it, he reached out about it and didn't ask me for anything in return for it. So you can't get them all. Some of them you can automate, right? You can automate the holidays because you know when they are. And so it's the in-betweens that, that pop up that you have to be in theory ready for. But yeah, I think there's a lot that makes you better for having spent a little bit of time at the outset on this. I was going to give you an example of one. There's a lot of my examples always end up with rabbis, right? So there's a rabbi I know. He was amazing at the birthday phone call, like amazing. He was a very prominent, very senior rabbi in a very large community in New York. And I would sit with him in meetings and he said, hold on a second. I got to make a call. You can call 1 minute, come back. I'm like, what was that? He said, it's a birthday. I said, you call people on the birthdays? He said, you have no idea how massively impactful that is on people when you remember their birthday. They know you're a busy guy, you're running around, you're trying to do for the community. There's 500 people in the community, 500 families. There's so much going on. You remembered my birthday and you called me. He said it hits well in the moment. He said, but it plays itself out forward when I actually do need them for something. Right? So everyone benefited, let's say, in the space of the birthday phone call. And I was like, okay, how do you do that? And so he said he had it programmed into his phone. Everyone's birthday was programmed into his phone. So he had this huge list of names and dates, and he would call every single one of them on their birthday. And I don't say that was part of his reputation that he was known for being the guy who called, but like it was like an expectation almost every year that you're going to get a call from the rabbi on your birthday. And it wasn't fake, it wasn't automated, it was time from his day, it was real. And it paid itself back in spades beyond spades for him and the community because he always remembered these people when no one else did.
It's awesome. I'm gonna match your story about rabbis with a story from my favorite subject also, which I fall back on, which is my dad. This one is an example of his craziness. I don't think it's quite as humorous as the other ones that I've gone into here. But so my dad owned men's clothing stores while I was growing up for 3 decades or so. And what allowed him to stay in business for all of those years and fight off the big chains that definitely had cheaper prices than he did was customer service. Like that was how he won.
Yeah.
There were whatever. And an example of that is, so when you came to the store, my dad probably had at any given time, I don't know how many people worked at the store, but there were probably 5 or 6 salespeople that at different times were on the floor. And if you were a customer, then you got the same salesperson every time. So as long as he was there that day, like if Larry was your salesperson, Larry was your salesperson. If you came back in a year from now, Larry was going to take care of you again. If you had Lou, it was going to be Lou. If you had Carl, it was going to be Carl. And my dad owned the store, and his salespeople loved him and hated him. And this is an exact reason why. Like this story encapsulates it, because what my dad would have them do is he would have them, they would have responsibilities beyond when the store opened. So, there was some cleanup duties or whatever. I don't know if it was taking out the trash or making sure the register was counted at the end, but there were some administrative tasks that got sort of diffused among the staff. And part of their responsibilities were, I have to ask my dad exactly what the math was, but no matter what time of year it was, all of the salespeople had to start writing Christmas cards, had to start writing holiday cards. So in January, they started writing 2 or 3 cards every day. And on January 1st or January 2nd, 2 or 3 cards. January 3rd, 2 or 3 cards. And at the end of January, they'd have a stack of whatever it was, 50, 60 cards, handwritten from the salesman to their personal client. And I think, and my dad said the staff hated him for it because like, who wants to do that work? And it was terrible. And then, but by December, they had a stack of several hundred cards, holiday cards, ready to go, handwritten to each specific client. And they would stick them in the mail at the beginning of December. And my dad said that the response from it, like literally this kept people coming. It was the reason why they went to my dad's store and, not the Men's Warehouse or wherever they could have gone down the block and saved a little money. Like that was the reason why they kept going back to him. It's relevant to this conversation. Sometimes it's also, I think that was a high quality touch point. They didn't do it for birthdays. They didn't do it for for Thanksgiving and Labor Day and July 4th. They did it for the holidays, but that was what they did right. And just like the congregants expected the rabbi's phone call on their birthday, clients started to expect their holiday card around the holidays,
Where's my card?
Right, well, where's my card, right? Like I'm expecting it this year. And it kept people coming back. And so it's not, sometimes it's like, will anyone notice if you don't start doing these things? Are you going to notice, Bini, which organizations don't send you a happy birthday today email? No, you're not going to notice.
I noticed the restaurants that did.
But are you going to notice the ones that do? And that I think is a good way to put it.
Right. I hear it. I hear it. The handwritten thing has always been something that I push people to do. I used to do it also. The joy and the level of appreciation people got from getting the handwritten. I did it on the high holidays. There's a high holiday card. As just a next level way of
How many people?
I did like all the board members, which was 15 to 20 people. And then the top, I want to say 50 to 75 donors.
It's a lot.
And I would have the board, I would have the president of the board, and in that case, it was a religious institution. The head of the institution also put a little comment as much as I could on the card too, and send it out. No ask. It's really just an appreciation,
just a touch point. Yeah,
a touch point at a very personal level, because they know. Again, I wrote the same thing in every card.
Sure.
I curated the text before, but it lands so heavy and well with everybody because no one's expecting it. And it's very meaningful.
Do you remember when you got started on that task of the high holidays? Did you do it a month before?
About
2
a
months
month.
before?
Yeah, it started about a month before, because also in that case, it was multi-locational. So the institution was based here. I was based overseas. I needed to get everybody in on it. I needed to give people time. I did it recently with a client this year who I don't say forced. I pushed him to do it, and he's like, "How many?" I said 100, and he thought 100's no problem. He's going to get to it. And he's like, "Oh, I'll do 200." I'm like, "Just call me when you get to 100." Barely got to 100. It just took forever because it takes a long time. And I said, "Look, there's a strategy behind this, and everybody knows it, right? So that's fine. The donor knows that there's something attached to this, but it's not in the immediate moment. In the immediate moment, it's just like, wow, handwritten, right?"
Yep.
I have it as an uncle of mine, the same thing. If he couldn't make a condolence call to somebody, he'd send a handwritten note. And I once asked him, I was like, "What's up with that?" He said, "Nobody handwrites anything anymore. The person gets a handwritten note in the mail. It's much better than a text. It's even better than the phone call. The handwritten note sits there with them. They have it. They hold it. It's all there. And so like, it's much better." I was like, okay. So that was his way of connecting in those spaces. Again, organizational leader honestly doesn't do any of this. If you do your job and you're running your organization and the mission and you're accomplishing and you're successful and you're raising and all that other stuff, this is not required work. This is, I think, I would say a little bit above and beyond, and then way above and beyond with some of the things that we're talking about. But I do think this separates. I think it's very much a separator for people. Again, you can easily do it through an automated system. You can do it through a mail merge. I used to do that too, where I make a benefit of a personalized mail merge kind of a thing. But for different level of people, in terms of who I needed to reach and how I needed to reach them, you have to be practical about it. So you can't get to all of them. Recently, I worked with somebody for the first time. I told you, I think, for the first time, he reached out to his supporters before the holidays. It's the first time. He never did it before. We did it the way that he felt comfortable about it. He did it. He got out to 100 people, right? And then after he sent it out, he said he was talking to somebody who told him, "Why'd you email it? I never read my email. You should have sent it on WhatsApp." He said to me, "Should I be WhatsApping this to everybody also?" I'm like, one thing at a time. right? I said, if I had told you to do email and WhatsApp, we would have done zero. So let's start with email and let's systematize the email structure for you getting messages out to people, quarterly, let's say, on certain holidays, and have an expectation of that, and then worry about WhatsApping the right message to people. Because he's like, well, I said, WhatsApp is informal. I said, it doesn't lend itself to that kind of a thing necessarily. The email is a little bit more structural. But I hear it. Let me flip it over for a minute here. What are the pitfalls here, the dangers in trying to do this or implementing this? What should an organization be mindful of and paying attention to in doing this right versus doing it wrong versus not doing it at all?
I don't think there's a ton of pitfalls. I really don't. I think it's hard to not do this well. The ones that I can think of is if you're really transparent about why you're doing this and you're saying that, like you're making it about the organization and not about the donor or the supporter. I think that's a mistake to avoid. That's a mistake to avoid. And I'm trying to even think of how someone would do this, but it can be done. I can't think of a good example at the moment. I'm saying organizations tend to make things about themselves. I think if you miss the moment or if you're slow, they get their card a month after their birthday, like that's bad luck. I don't know. I'll tell you where I see the problems with this approach is when it is and you mentioned this in your list of 5, when the milestone is about the organization. That's when I tend to have more opinions about how to do these things. So if the organization is celebrating a 10th anniversary, if the executive director, as you said, has been there for 5 years and you want to make note of it, then I sort of think there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. Because then it's really easy to make your message all about the organization and not about the donor. And this is like a hard truth, but no one cares that it's your 15th anniversary. Like, I'm sorry, no one cares. Right. So you can use that as a platform to craft a message, and you can use that as a platform to have a big dinner and a celebration, and you can celebrate it. But the main message shouldn't be, look at how awesome we've been for the last 15 years. Should be, look how awesome our donors have been over the last 15 years. Or I would say the best message would be, we have a lot to celebrate, but we have a lot more work to do. And let's look toward the next 15 years as a community, as donors. Like, I think there's lots of ways to take that message and spin it in a forward-thinking, positive way that makes it about the donor. But I've seen a lot of organizations just sort of rest on that. Let's celebrate the organization's anniversary.
It's a very good point. And in thinking about that example specifically, the way I would actually probably do it is more like a letter, blog post kind of a thing from the person, as opposed to some sort of long form celebration email from the organization, where the person simply reflecting on 5 years and what we've been able to accomplish together in the 5 years that I've been, how open and accommodating and welcoming the community has been to me in my time here in this position, and how appreciative I am, whatever. That would land much better than something sort of glorious and overdone by the organization. I would share with you a couple of other examples of dangers. You mentioned ghosting or missing the moment. That can be a disaster, and unfortunate. An organization doesn't send anything out when something happens, and that's tone deaf, very tone deaf, and it's noticeable again because everybody else is. I think if nothing else drives you as a leader, then the fear of that FOMO kind of vibe of everybody else is sending something and I'm not. I have to do something here. So in that space, you have to do it, but you have to be careful how you do it. So if you try to shoehorn your organizational message into it and try to make it about you, then you are tone deaf, even though you tried not to be tone deaf. So the best example is every organization that tries to fundraise off of every tragedy that happens anywhere in the world and has nothing to do with their organization. So there's, God forbid, a hurricane in the Caribbean, and you work in the Far East and something happened to your organization 15 years ago, and you send out an email that says, oh, we're with the people of the Caribbean. Can you support our work now in the Far East? It's like, come on, man. Like, really? Like, just send the email. Don't mention you in that space. So you can half get it right and completely get it wrong at the same time by being just sort of obtuse about like what actually is happening and not happening, by trying to exploit, like, I think clockwork here in the Middle East, right? Rocket goes off and 5 emails come out from organizations asking you to donate to support people somewhere here, there, or the other where, and you don't ever heard of them, and they're probably not even real, right? So that just to me that's bad. That's bad organizational work. Thinking that that's the way to maybe they think if they get one that it was worth it. But to me, there are things. Here's the one that I would say. This one popped up a couple of weeks ago, and I'll mention it by name. Ephraim Gopin, who we've mentioned a few times, we've not yet had on the podcast. He's very careful. He pays attention, really good attention to emails from organizations. And so the one he highlighted a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn is an organization that deals with infertility as a focus. I think we both know them, and they sent out an email on Mother's Day, right? That Mother's Day is not a holiday for everybody, something to that effect. And to be mindful of the people who are not yet parents, who are struggling through infertility on a day like today, which he highlights, I think is a super positive way to highlight something that they're really paying attention to, the pain of a portion of their audience and their community, and not even their community, beyond their community, which I think is really, really good. So, because sometimes you can miss that and you send out just Happy Mother's Day, and there are people on your list who unfortunately are not mothers or have not been able to be, whatever it is, and it's painful. And so you come across as tone deaf because you're not paying attention to your audience. I think you can't be too careful by half on these kinds of things, but you can pay attention to it at the same time.
Great example. I don't remember reading that. That's awesome though.
Yeah, if I find it, I'll share it. I think the organization is Tikva. I think is the organization out west, West Coast. I did a couple of campaigns with them. They're really mindful of the audience. And even the first year we talked, when I worked with them about doing their campaign around Mother's Day, but not on Mother's Day, and to be careful about it, to really pay attention to it, and to draw attention to the fact that that's a holiday and say they celebrate, but maybe it's not a holiday for everybody, kind of a thing. So to me, like, there are things that organizations can really mess this up. But I think overall, as an approach, it's pretty easy to get right. The personal ones, I mean, yes, it takes work, and I'll share one really disaster that happened with me to close this one out. But so there's this organization I mentioned. We implemented this strategy for birthdays. It's built on the CRM. And it was email plus a link to a coupon for a restaurant or whatever it was. And it glitched, and it sent everybody an email on the same day, right? So the entire email list is like thousands of people got, hey, it's your birthday. Happy birthday from Bini Marilis. And it was like nobody, the head of the organization got it. The board president got it. And like, my birthday is not for 10 months. What is this? I was like, no, it's like really, really bad. I'm like, okay. And then suddenly that restaurant got inundated with coupons, right? Because everybody got a birthday message, and I had to shut the program down because it glitched, and it wasn't. The president was like, this is not worth it. He goes, if it works, great. But if it doesn't work, it's not worth it. And so you have to be, as I said, like, I think it's easy to get right. I think the philosophy or the underlying strategy, I think, makes sense on all these different kinds of occasions. Some of them are more high touch work and less high touch work. But overall, like, I think the way you sort of talked about it, this is how you sort of, you make meaning as opposed to just messaging anything out there. And that's how you do that, is by being human and personal and real.
One thing that I would be really interested to do, maybe this is a episode in and of itself or whatever, is I would love to put that example under the microscope a little bit and think about ways that you could turn that error into a positive. Because something tells me if we put our heads together and replay that scenario, you would be able to flip that and create a meaningful moment out of it.
Yeah, at the time, it's really a good point.
I'm sure I don't want to minimize I know that feeling. Like,
it was horrible.
It's the worst. It's the worst. But after you have some distance and can breathe, maybe there's a way to
this was
make
like
it positive.
Probably 10 years ago. But
when you were a mere 40.
But under the microscope of being the fundraiser at the organization, and the president feeling like, okay, we tried something and it was a disaster, and that's going to hurt, right? That's how a lot of the board would think naturally, is this going to hurt us, not help us? So let's not do this again. Yes, I'm sure there's a way to flip that around and upside down now. Um, but
Yeah,
at the time it was like, I'm out.
sure.
And I called the guy who ran the program. I'm like, we're out. He's like, you're out. One glitch, you're out. I'm like, I cannot afford this. And we can't make. I can't. I said, unless you can guarantee me 1,000% that it's going to work every time after this, I can't. I can't put myself into that kind of a position. But again, I don't think it destroys the idea of what we're talking about here in terms of managing and mastering special occasions. We didn't even get into sort of how to strategize this out. But I do think there are ways to do that where you can minimize some of the work, at the front and then maximize the impact later on. But we'll have to save that, I think, for another time.
Sounds good.
Okay, so that was this subject. As I always say at the end instead of at the beginning, like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Again, we're still looking. I'm going to put two things out there today. We're looking for serial board members, people who are currently or have been on multiple boards at the same time successfully, because we want to understand and talk to them about being a board member and all that other stuff. Second thing I want to put out there is, if you're an organizational leader and you want to be live coached on the podcast, either around your messaging or your leadership, I think that would be amazing. So if you're into that, free session with Raimi and me on that kind of a thing. So let me know if that's you. And if you got 55 minutes and you heard that, more power to you. That's it for today. Take care.